This is a presentation meant to portray the learning experience that I've had in a year's worth of business law at Blacksburg High School, taught by the exuberant Dr. Simmons. I have chosen 7 of my favorite topics covered this year and arranged them into a presentation. So here they are. Since ancient times, people had started to realize that there needed to be rules set in place to ensure the survival of their group. One of the most famous examples of this is Hammurabi's Code and its infamous law, eye for an eye. Over time, this concept evolved to become what we now refer to as our legal system, which is mostly managed by our government. There are a lot of subdivisions of law that branch out into several subjects. Some of these are written above, like criminal, constitutional, administrative, environmental, and intellectual property. The basis of our system lies in the Constitution, which was modeled after the British Constitution, with tweaks to ensure that the absolute power, like the one that was abused by the English monarch, would not happen again. The Constitution is made up of the preamble, the famous "We the People," the main body, and the amendments. The first and some might say the most important amendments of the Constitution are also referred to as the Bill of Rights. Here are the first 10 amendments: the freedom of press, speech, religion, and petition, the right to bear arms, no soldier shall be quartered during times of peace, there needs to be probable cause in order for your private property to be seized or you to be searched, you cannot be tried for the same trial twice, you have the right to a grand jury, and you may remain silent if you do not wish to self-incriminate yourself during a trial. You have the right to due process. You have the right to an impartial jury. No unfair punishments shall be made against you. Citizens also have other rights that are not specifically stated in the Constitution, and the rights and powers that are not given to the government and not explicitly stated are left for the state and the people. Next, we have our court systems. Our government is divided in 3 branches to ensure that no one branch has absolute power over the others. This concept is known as checks and balances. The 3 branches are executive, which is made up of the president, his staff, and his cabinets; legislative, which is made up of the Senate and the House of Representatives, which are 2 ways of representing the population in government, the House of Reps being represented based on the population of each state, while the Senate has a fixed amount of representatives per state. And finally, the judicial branch. The judicial branch is the focus of this course, and it is made up of mainly the state court system and the federal court system. The federal court system has the following courts: district courts, district circuit court, and the Supreme Court of the United States, the court with the highest power, which is supposed to set the example and interpret the laws of our country. The state court system has the following courts: the trial court, the appellate court, and the Supreme Court. Both court systems work their way up to more powerful courts depending on the level of satisfaction with the result of the current court the case has been presented to. Sometimes the next step after a court case is the correctional system. Even though it is not a very jolly topic to discuss, it is a necessary evil that actually makes up a huge part of our system, since the US has more people in jails and prisons than it has people in college. What people often overlook is the difference between jails and prisons. Jails are actually run by local authorities and are for those who are waiting for a trial or those that need to be punished short term. Prisons are much more serious, run by multiple entities and long term, whose goal is to contain real threats to society. Of course, the solution to criminals is not just to lock them up, and so the system gives them a chance to rethink their actions, or if they have mental illnesses, then they allow them to be treated to potentially cure the problem or at least restrain it. Some of the methods are parole, probation, community corrections, and diversion. All of these methods have to do with monitored action, meaning that the subject is given a chance to prove themselves by going out in the real world while being surveilled to ensure that they are taking the correct steps to fix their mistakes. To make sure that our law works correctly, we need the help of special people across the country that are experts on the matter and that are willing to put their lives on stake to ensure these laws. Such a group of people is called the police. The idea was initially started by small communities that wanted safety. This concept evolved over time and is today our police system. The ranks in the police force, from highest to lowest, are ranked above. All of these ranked members might have different powers, but they all have one task in common. That is to ensure our safety and the fluidity of the system. The United States is a republic, a system in which the power is held by the people. Although we do choose people to represent us, so to some extent we might also be classified as a democracy. There are several different political systems that cultures have invented over the centuries. An authoritarian system is one where people give their strict obedience to authority, usually the government. Monarchy is a system where there is a figure of authority that has power over the people. And communism, invented by Karl Marx, is a system that might look perfect in theory, where no one has anything more than anyone else, but when applied in the real world, fails terribly and creates a miserable society. There are also different ways to interpret the laws. Using common law, the system decides based on tradition and precedents. Using civil law, a set of written laws has to be respected and followed in order to make a decision. And using religious law, the decisions are based on a religious entity or idea. In a modern world whose necessity is to strive and keep evolving, it is essential that trade is put in place to share the most valuable of resources scattered across the globe. A country has several ways to do that: through imports, or goods that are brought from outside the area, exports, or goods that are shipped out from the country, and FDI, or interest made into a firm or company or business that is situated in another country. The whole process is very complex and involves a lot of organization, but there are several essential ideas that can be used to implement the ideology of a trade economy. Some strategies are to offer subsidies to incentivize more production, or require a license in order to import. There are also ways to reduce imports that might be hostile to the targeted country, like putting a tariff or tax on imports to encourage more production in land, or to put an embargo or block on a certain good or country. All of these strategies need to be thought out before being put in place to ensure that the interest in global trade is not hindered. This is the end of my presentation, and so thank you for listening. Goodbye.